Hello there, everyone. Just thought I'd like to do a book review for you today. This is a different book. It's not theological, it's not a Bible, but still very interesting. So I love history, very much interested in it. And one of the things that I've noticed is we have a certain preconception of what the history of North and South America is like. And it kind of gets glossed over a little bit, at least it did, for me in school. And this book is really interesting. It tries to dispel some misconceptions we might have, some myths we might have. And the author's main premise here, and this book has been out for almost 20 years, but the author's main premise is that we tend to think of Native Americans as being one with nature and never interrupting nature's balance, always being in balance with nature, in step with nature, would never dream of interrupting anything that exists naturally. But the author says that's not the case. Native Americans terraformed. Native Americans rerouted rivers. Native Americans moved the earth to do what they want to do, and may even have overhunted or overfished or driven all the nutrients from the soil in different places. So this is really fascinating. And he really does a deep dive, especially into Central and South America. And not to give you too many spoilers, but here's one that I think it's probably already generally known. And the author's point is that archaeologists already know all these things, but the general public doesn't. And this one was fascinating to me, and this is just to wet your whistle. So what we call Indian corn, also known as maize, it doesn't exist in nature. It's a genetically modified, it's a hybrid between two other grains. And it was probably developed in what is now Mexico a few thousand years ago. Fascinating. And that technology spread rapidly to North and South America. And I just found that earth-shattering. Indian corn is different than we have than sweet corn. Sweet corn would have been known and familiar to civilizations in other parts of the world, but Indian corn, maize, that's its own thing. It's not as sweet, it's not as wet, and it's extremely useful for so many different recipes and nutrition. So that was really interesting to me. And the book has, this beautiful cover. We're getting some kind of weird, almost like a grid effect. I think it's the light shining through the tree above me. But anyway, this is a beautiful book. It's just the paperback. This is a used book. I picked this up used. I try to get as many used books as I can. It's not always possible. Someone had underlined in here. There's some underlining. I don't really care about that. I was going to erase all of it, but it's been so much. And these are things that I wanted to read anyway. That I agreed with. So it's a good book. Has some good graphics, some pictures. Again, it's from 20 years ago, so some of it might seem a little bit low tech or low resolution, but I thought this is a good presentation, and I found it to be interesting. The only critique I really have about this is he kind of bounces around geographically, and that kind of irritated me a little bit. I didn't know where I was going to be next, and that's my only critique, and that's actually pretty minor. I mean, you can catch up when you're reading it, but I found it a very interesting and engaging book. Now, keep in mind, it's not written from a Christian perspective. So he's going to say some things and reveal some of his opinions that, if you're a young earth creationist like I am, you're just not going to agree fully with all of his numbers, which is fine. But he's still saying other things that are very useful and just raise some fascinating questions for the Christian, right? So after the Tower of Babel, and you have all these different languages that God created in an instant. And I think that those language groups created family and were part of family groups or became family groups. And they spread out around the world. Some of those people obviously came to the Americas. And how did they get here? And that's one of the questions he addresses in this book. Some different ideas about how that happened and how it might have been possible. And for the Christian, it's very interesting to ruminate about. Well, it's just a quick review. I think this book is definitely worth your time, especially if you're interested in history. And if you're like me, if you've read a ton of, um, you know, American and European history, but only since like the last few hundred years that it covers, this will be very interesting to you. So what was the world like before Columbus set foot in the Caribbean? All right, that's all I have the time for now, and I'll catch you later.